Beste OOG voor Afrika lezers. Mijn naam is Peter Boshuijzen en samen met Marjolein Westerterp ben ik verantwoordelijk voor het maken van OOG voor Afrika. In ons laatste nummer kondigden wij dit interview aan met Stephen Segerman, eigenaar van platenzaak Mabu Vinyl in Kaapstad. Een pareltje van een winkeltje als u op zoek bent naar mooie tweedehands vinyl. In de buurt van Kloofstraat, Redenstraat. Stephen Segerman doet in de wonderbaarlijke documentaire Oscar bekroond de voice-over in Searching for Sugar Man. En dit interview vond plaats op locatie in Mabu Vinyl, waarin hij vertelt en uitlegt hoe deze prachtige documentaire tot stand is gekomen. Veel plezier.
Okay, man, thanks for that.
In the labyrinth of streams beneath, the quiet, unearthly presence of miraculous hill dwellers in the gentle hills around. Reptiles abounding, fossils, caves, cool air heights. Each house repeats a home. Windows roll. A beast car locked in against morning. Wait! There's been a slaughter here.
Okay.
I was born in Johannesburg in 1954.
All right.
It was a month after Elvis went into the Sun Studios.
Oh, yeah.
Birth of rock and roll. I came a month later, so I'm a true baby boomer, as they say.
All right.
Yeah.
So, but you gave that up. I mean, I got most of it, of course, from the movie also. That
Yes.
that changed a lot of people's life. When you got involved in all that stuff. But when was that actually?
Well, I first heard Rodriguez when I was in the Defence Force. We had to do compulsory military training.
Right.
So that was 72. I then worked, I got a law degree. And then I worked, we had a family jewellery business, manufacturing jewelry. We used to make gold jewellery. So I worked there for close to 20 years. And then through a small illness I had to stop, and I decided to move to Cape Town. And that's where everything kind of started and
Okay.
changed for me and Rodriguez.
All right.
So-
But you started your music business already then, or not?
No,
You were just looking for.
I came down here. I didn't want to do jewellery anymore because I had a very big clientele there, but I didn't know anybody here.
All
And I
right.
wanted to be somebody else. I wanted to find out who I really was instead of just the son of a jeweler.
All right.
So I did a few things. I made films for a while, TV commercials. Then I worked on the internet, the startup internet company, which was where we set up the website. We were looking for new and innovative web things that people when we went on the internet for the first time, the first thing we looked for was Rodriguez, and there was not a mention of Rodriguez anywhere on the internet as it existed at that time.
But it was quite early, right?
It was
Internet,
pre-Google,
huh?
it was Yahoo time and,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, but still there was nothing. So the guy I worked for said we have to find interesting South African based things to draw traffic to us. So we set up the great Rodriguez hunt to look for Rodriguez. I'd had the conversation with Craig, and he went off to become a detective, and I went off to become a detective. So,
Okay, so you met Craig before that project actually.
I was working in the internet company down in Green Market Square,
All right.
and I met Craig because he came down to Cape Town, and he had read the liner notes, so we chatted, and we decided let's find Rodriguez. So he was in Johannesburg, and I was here, so he went off and did his thing. And we kept in touch, but I did my thing. And the one thing I did was go back upstairs and say to this guy, let's put a website up, a one page, just saying, where is this man with a milk carton?
All right.
Like missing in action.
Okay.
So that's literally, because I was working in the internet company, I would have not have known how to do that. And then that's the website that Eva found and
All right.
contacted me, and from then on, and this whole thing's happened in Cape Town. So it's Johannesburg is a distant memory. Being a jeweler is a distant memory. The only thing that's similar is when you sell records, you never look at the cover, you always got to slide the vinyl out and look at the vinyl to see what it's like. And with diamonds as well, you never sell the paper they come in, you always got to take the diamond out and look for those very small imperfections, and records are very similar to that. You have to know, so I find that very similar.
Okay. So this thought about making the movie, when did this project come together? I mean, did you know Malik before? Or
No.
So was he interested? Did he know Rodriguez at all? Because
No.
he's a Swede. Does he live
Nothing.
here in Cape Town or what?
Absolutely nothing.
No?
So after '98, when Rodriguez toured here, he went home and everyone went home, and we said, well, what are we going to do now? So we set up the website with a guy called Brian Curran, and we've been working for 15 years to achieve. We've been his unofficial publicists. So any opportunity that came along, because it would always come through the website. So I'd speak to anybody. We took him to London in 2005. He came out here a few times. We just kept working with Rodriguez, taking advantage of any. A couple of film directors wanted to make a feature film about it. So I could mention some names, but that might still happen. And then out of the blue, in 2006 or 7, I can't remember, I got an email from this guy called Malik, and a lot of people had wanted to make documentaries as well, but no one ever did it. And then Malik emailed me and said he's coming to Cape Town, he wants to talk to me. I don't know who he was, but once again, I'd speak to anybody. And this guy walked into my shop, and lovely guy, and said, I read the story, I want to make a film. But at that stage, all he wanted to make was a 10-minute little docu for Swedish TV for a program called Cobra, which he used to make documentaries for. That's why he was traveling around the world. And so we went up onto Table Mountain Road and shot a little 10-minute film. And my wife said to me, why would you wear such a lousy t-shirt? You know, you're going on Swedish TV, you know, this is your big moment. And Malik went away and he toured around the world, and a few months later he said, of all the stories that he brought back to Cobra, this one is just resonating. Everyone wants to hear the story. So then he quit his job as a TV journalist and he just gave up his life to make this film.
Oh,
and he spent years trying to raise money. He had no money. Him with a woman with a camera, literally, that was the crew. Malik and the woman with the camera, and he had a Super 8.
Was that Ekström, the director of photography, or not?
Nothing. It was Malik with a
Okay.
Super 8 and a
Okay.
laptop, and Camilla Skagerstrom. She's a Cannes film winner, but that was, and in Cape Town the crew swelled to 3 because I was the driver and the locations manager, and I took them around, and we just filmed like guerrilla filming, literally walking around the streets just filming. When he went then I got introduced to the Rodriguez family, and he wooed them. They got him used to him, and then he started filming them. He came back here, and then he sat at his kitchen table, man. You know what it's like, this life.
Yeah, yeah.
He sat for like 2 years, no food, no income, just editing this film. And the funding ran out for the animation, and the funding ran out for the soundtrack. He did it all himself. He just, as he needed to become something, he became it.
Right.
And then he finished this film, and he sent me a rough cut, and I thought, well, this is pretty good, you know. What do I know?
Ah. But all these old, because it looks like it's all like this polygon, you know, the colors, like it's like an old.
You know what we did?
Mickey 8.
He wanted old Super 8 film.
Yeah.
So I put a sign on my window saying any old Super 8 film. And a woman walked in, a young girl who had a bag full of these films. And we paid her. She was happy, and she signed a release. And Malik came up to my house, and we've got that Super 8 projector there. It's sitting on top of that bookcase there, on the top there.
All right.
So you see there on top. We took that Super 8 projector, and he sat in the bedroom, and we watched films. And the films that she'd given us were all the films you see of Table Mountain and The Purple Flowers and children's at nursery school. We got one batch, and it was beautiful. So what he did, he used that, plus he was filming with a Super 8 a lot to catch that sort of feel. But what happened was he ran out of money to process the Super 8 film. So he got that little app for his iPhone that you can shoot Super 8 on your iPhone. So the legend's grown that he shot the whole film on his iPhone, which is complete rubbish. He just shot the first scene in the movie. We see Rodriguez flickering against the background of the match.
Yeah.
That was shot with an iPhone. It was like 1 or 2 scenes.
Is it?
But he literally, Malik just improvised and then finished this film and entered it for Sundance. And they said, we're opening the festival with this film. And that's when all hell broke loose. All things went crazy from then. That's when we realized we had something on our hands that wasn't kind of normal, and we won the awards at Sundance, and we had like showing the film at Sundance to American audiences who knew nothing about this at all was the most incredible experience, because they'd sit down, hear about this man who was dead, then find out he wasn't dead, then find out he was alive, and then we had Rodriguez with us at Sundance, so we'd bring him into the theatre afterwards to play a couple of tunes, and just blew people's minds.
Yeah.
And that's when we started realizing the impact this man is having globally instead of just around these parts, you know.
Right. Okay, so that changed quite a bit of people's life, I am sure. But you persuaded him to come over to Cape Town?
Initially, back in '97, when we first spoke to him.
Yeah.
I had a long conversation with him, and he had no idea about South Africa. He was smart, because Rodriguez always sat in the libraries when he wasn't working on construction sites. He read a lot. He'd read and read and read. So his knowledge of what was going on in the world was incredible. So he knew about South Africa. He just didn't know that he was famous here. So when I told him, he was skeptical. But when the first thing he said afterwards was, let's see if we can go tour there, because he knew that touring is the key. He'd put out his record, but he wanted to tour. And then when they came out here, I convinced him over a period of time that he had to come here. And when he came here, he found out just what was going on here, which is he's massive. He really is.
Yeah.
We used to walk around the streets here, and people would just walk up to him and just say, we'd never met him before. So
I remember seeing the movie. I was sitting there with just somebody else in the movie in Star Kino here, and I never heard about this guy, but when he got on stage, man, that really got to me. It got me emotional. I couldn't believe that, man. 20 minutes, people were just yelling and shouting, and just the bass playing that, So,
like
exactly
that,
what you were commenting in the movie. That happened to me sitting in a chair there.
It's captured really beautifully, that whole powerful thing of...
Man.
I mean, we don't even show him singing many songs in the film.
No,
you see him starting a song and ending the concert, but there's a lot of concert sequence, and it's very powerful.
I don't know who said it, but I think Steve Rowland, Inner City Poem. I think when I also heard the lyrics for the first time, I thought, this guy, man, lost my heart when I found it, this kind of stuff, you got like, wow, how do you come up with this? It's quite amazing.
Just the two albums,
But what I was wondering about when I looked at the movie also, because you guys, you grew up in the Joburg, the anti-apartheid, and all, obviously people think, from abroad, like, but the anti-apartheid probably got started, black people and all this, but I see a lot of white people actually, being opposed. So I heard about Kerkol, Muller, I don't know so good, but Kombuis, we did an interview with.
Okay, the thing was, when Rodriguez came out in South Africa, his music was very popular across the board. It wasn't just anti-apartheid activists who were listening to it, housewives doing the ironing, some very racist apartheid cops were listening. Everybody was listening to it. So it wasn't just that he affected the anti-apartheid movement. I think the trailer, the American trailer for the film, cuts what I say and implies that. But all we say is that he had an influence on the young Afrikaans guys who grew up in a very stilted atmosphere. And Rodriguez spoke to them, and they managed to break out of the very strong Calvinistic background they were in and start finding a way to express themselves. They got influenced, and we interviewed those guys. The rest of South Africa, everyone just loved his music for a variety of different reasons. What had happened that day, that amazing day, was that Craig had told me that he'd made contact with the Rodriguez family, and he'd sent through, Craig Bartholomew Stradum had sent through a copy of the article that he had written. Now, the only person he could fax it to who had a fax machine in the Rodriguez family was Eva, because she was in the army, in the American army. She was a helicopter pilot, and so she was in Kansas, and she had a fax machine, and someone sent her the article. And on the article was the website address for our little website with the milk carton. So what she did is, because of the time difference in America, she was there about 8 hours behind us, she posted a message on the message board. And when I came to work first thing in the morning, we looked at the message board and saw this message from Rodriguez's daughter, and it blew our minds. And my God, this is Rodriguez's daughter. So we took it off immediately. We didn't want anybody else to see it and get that information. And I had to wait till that evening for the 8 hours, the time delay, before I could phone her. And I phoned her at her post in the army, where she was sitting in her office, and had a conversation with Eva Rodriguez, which was crazy. It was about an hour. Me and her were as amazed to meet each other as each other. I mean, she couldn't believe it and I couldn't believe it. So we had this really wonderful conversation. And as I said in the movie, we agreed we're going to maybe do a tour and find out a way to do it. I mean, it was just me and her. No one else knew about this in the world. And I said, I want to speak to your father. You give me a phone number, or, you know, maybe get him to call me sometime. But I mean, it was saying I want to speak to, you know, Paul McCartney, you know what I mean? And we went to sleep, and we were sleeping, and the phone rang. And you know, the phone rings when you're sleeping 1 or 2 in the morning. It scares you, you know.
Yeah.
Who's phone? My wife answered, as I said, because... And I went into the other room and picked up the phone and had a conversation with Rodriguez at 2 o'clock in the morning with this man who not only I was named after, but whose music I'd followed for 20 years and who was dead. You know, a lot of people ask me, was the guy you met the person you expected? And I said no, because he was alive. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
You expect someone you expect to be dead and they're alive, you know, like a zombie. But it was just the most... all these things were happening in one day. You know, we found him, we spoke to him. We spoke to Eva. It was a crazy, crazy day. But that was the catalyst that started everything.
That all came together, all that work you invested there.
Yeah, I think what I managed to do was let him know how much enthusiasm there was for him in this country. Because, as I say, he thought it was a crank call, like just a lone fan somewhere in the middle of Africa. And I said, no, this is South Africa. There's a lot of people here. A lot of people love your music. You're huge here, you know. And it convinced him. Thankfully, because he could have put the phone down and forgotten about it. But he's a smart guy, and he followed up on it, you know.
Great, great. So in the beginning, you set him up also for the tours and all this. Are you still involved?
I've been involved from the beginning with knowing what's going on. We always got people to handle the tours. Things didn't always go so well. Money always didn't come through. So we learnt as we went along. And what we learnt, myself and more importantly Rodriguez's daughters, is that you've got to do it yourself. And for the past few years, Rodriguez's daughters, Reagan and Eva, have been specifically managing him. Eva manages his affairs in South Africa, and Reagan manages his affairs internationally. And they've more recently got a booking agent who handles his gigs. And his whole situation's been run very professionally now, because now he's a global icon on a global level. So you got to do that. But he's being handled very well, and he's doing very well, and he's enjoying himself now.
Are you guys still in touch once in a while?
Yeah, no, I'm in touch with the family all the time.
Yeah.
Rodriguez is not so easy to be in touch with. He never he got rid of his phone. I think he might have a cell phone now, but he doesn't really use it. But I'm in touch with him all the time and work quite closely with him.
Okay. So when is the last time he was here?
He toured in February.
Okay.
I think he was here for the whole of February.
Was this in the casino? What?
He played at Grand West.
Grand West.
Yeah, and there was an overlap with the Oscars because his tour overran and he couldn't get back to the Oscars in time. But he pretty much felt that his responsibility was to the people of South Africa. He loves coming here and performing here.
Okay.
So he's very loyal to us.
All right. Because he also is touring in Europe, eh? I mean, I think actually this month he's in Amsterdam.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, and you told me something about Paris, that he had laryngitis there?
His first gig in Paris, in France, he's become huge. Unfortunately, he's been touring, been performing a lot, and for his first gig, his voice went. So a lot of people who didn't know that he just had laryngitis thought he was really a bad performer, and some people were upset. But you got to understand, the majority of people who see him perform just come to see him.
Yeah.
And if they're not expecting, Maria Callas, you know what I mean? They're just expecting Rodriguez, and they love the concert. But he came right. He finished off his French tour. He's just done Montreux Jazz Festival. He's done Glastonbury. He's done Amsterdam. He's having a great time.
So he's full-time on,
touring around the world.